thank you all, and certainly for Doug and I, we've enjoyed this. Some people have said, how do you manage all this? And I've told everybody that this is an outstanding opportunity for anyone interested. The staff is just amazing. And it really is not a very difficult job with the staff that we have. So all of my successes would be geared towards Bob and his crew. So it's them that should get the thanks and the gratitude from us. So thank you all very much for your confidence. With that, I think I'm turning it over to Tony.
Yeah, we're gonna, each of the program directors will run through their portion of the annual action plan pretty quickly. If you guys have questions during their presentations, raise your hands and we'll handle them. But Tony's gonna start with the fishery management section.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to go through the bolded options within the Goal 1, the strategy to rebuild, maintain, and fairly allocate Atlantic coastal fisheries. The non-bolded items are either carryovers from last year or standard practices that we do each year. For American eel, we're going to work with the technical committee to review and develop a strategy to incorporate the pertinent findings from the 2014 AFS into future assessments and management decisions, and update the Young of the Year surveys with the 2014 data. For American lobster, we will complete and implement the cancer, or now Jonah crab FMP, as directed to ensure the long-term sustainability of the fishery. And we will complete the 2015 benchmark assessment and consider a management response to that assessment's findings. The Lobster Board today initiated an addendum for consistency with federal measures, and we will also include that as a task under lobster. For Atlantic herring, we'll review the 2015 specifications to determine if there's any changes are necessary, and review the operational assessment results and consider it a management response if necessary, and set the specifications for up to 3 years starting in 2016 through 2018. Also for herring, we'll hold as necessary meetings to establish state effort controls, the days out meetings for Area 1A and 1B, and 1B is new for this year. We'll also finalize and implement the measures included in Amendment 3, which proposes management options for spawning area efficacy, fixed gear rollover provisions, and empty fish hole provisions. Under Atlantic Menhaden, we'll review the results of the 2014 benchmark stock assessment and consider management response if necessary. We'll continue to work with the technical committee and the biological reference points working group to present options for board consideration on ecosystem-based reference points that account for predation effects. Under Atlantic striped bass, we'll continue the development of Chesapeake Bay reference points or an updated stock assessment, update data needs, and consider a management response to the findings of that work. For Atlantic sturgeon, we'll continue the development of the 2017 benchmark stock assessment, collaborate with federal agencies to analyze bycatch data, and prioritize and process genetic samples for use in the assessment. Under horseshoe crab, we will review all of the possible data sources for the Adaptive Resource Management Framework, or the ARM as it's better known, and determine if an alternate data source can be used in place of the horseshoe crab benthic trawl survey data if that survey is not found to get additional funding sources for it. We will also complete and review the artificial bait studies and consider management implications to the study. Under northern shrimp, we'll finalize and implement measures to include in Amendment 3, which proposes a limited entry system for the fishery. Under shad and river herring, we will review the products of the River Herring Technical Expert Working Group and consider any of those for management use. For the South Atlantic species under Atlantic croaker, we'll initiate the development of the 2016 benchmark stock assessment. We will complete the annual update of the traffic light approach to determine if management changes are necessary. For black drum, we will review the 2014 benchmark assessment and consider any a management response if necessary. For red drum, we will complete the 2015 benchmark assessment and consider a management response to the assessment findings. For Spanish mackerel, we will evaluate the results of the pilot program for seasonal exemptions in the commercial pound net fishery and consider management changes to the management program if necessary. For spot, we will also initiate the development of a 2016 benchmark assessment, as well as complete the annual update of the traffic light to determine if any management changes are necessary. For summer flounders, scup, and black sea bass, we'll continue the development of the comprehensive summer flounder amendment, considering changes to both the commercial and recreational management in coordination with the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council, and complete a management response to the summer flounder recreational working group. And we'll also consider, under this comprehensive amendment, we'll consider the technical committee's recommendation on the climate change impacts for species distribution and allocation. And this afternoon, the Summer Flounder Board also initiated an addendum to consider changes for the 2015 recreational fishery, which we will add into this task list. For SCUP, we'll collaborate with the Northeast Fisheries Science Center to complete the 2015 benchmark stock assessment and consider a management response to that assessment findings. And for black sea bass, we will finalize regulations for the 2015 recreational fishery, consider initiation of an addendum for recreational management measures for 2016 and later, as well as work in collaboration with the Mid-Atlantic Council and the Center to continue work on the 2016 benchmark stock assessment. And we will consider an assessment update in 2015 if any new data become available. For Tautog, we'll review the results of the 2014 benchmark stock assessment and consider management response to the assessment findings. For weakfish, we will complete the 2015 benchmark assessment and update the 2015 stock status indicators to evaluate any changes in the population. And in winter flounder, we will monitor the Northeast Fisheries Science Center stock assessment activities for the inshore winter flounder stocks and set specifications for 2016 to 2018. And the Winter Flounder Board also asked that we work more collaboratively with the New England Fishery Management Council, and we will add that task into the action plan as well. Under task 1.24, we'll work with NOAA headquarters and the regional leadership to improve the alignment of state and federal budgets. And we'll finalize the reconfiguration of a combined AP for summer flounder, scup, black sea bass, and improve the AP input process with the Mid-Atlantic Council. I will pass the baton over to Pat for goal 2. Are there any questions I should ask first?
Thank you. Am I good? Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, at the end of yesterday's EEL board meeting, there was a brief discussion on turbine mortality, and I believe a commitment from the board to sort of ramp up our efforts to monitor that situation. I just wonder, I know it's already embedded in a previous addendum, but I think the board fully recognizes the importance of that issue, and I wonder if it should be elevated to an action item. Thank you.
We can do that, unless there's a problem from the rest of the commission. Seeing none, we will include that. Any other questions? Adam?
Thank you very much. The Summer Flounder Board has had discussion on a couple of consecutive meetings now about the development of sex-based modeling, and I was wondering if we could add an action item that might read, work in collaboration with NIMS Northeast Fisheries Science Center and industry on sex-based modeling development. Specifically, there'd been a lot of discussion earlier this year about possibly hosting a half or one-day workshop in connection with a monitor a technical committee meeting week that I know Tony was aware of, and we were looking for a place to add that somewhere, and this might be the right time for that.
You want to?
Thanks, Adam. You know, you're right. We have talked about that a number of times at the Summer Flounder Board. I think it's fine to add it as a task in here, but it's probably with the understanding that it may not be completed. That, you know, the sex-based modeling may not be completed in 2015, and that would trigger a peer review and a number of other things. But I think we can capture it so that, you know, as you said, working with industry and the Science Center folks and the technical committee moving forward on exploring that and seeing, you know, determining the viability of that approach and that type of thing. Is that adequate?
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. And Tony, I just didn't hear exactly what you said about linking the Chesapeake Bay reference points and the amendment, whether it was or for, or how that was worded. I couldn't quite figure that out for striped bass.
Rob, we have here in the task to either do Chesapeake Bay reference points or to look at a new assessment. So it's one or the other, and then a management response to whichever approach we move forward with.
Follow up, Rob?
When would be the right time to talk about that? Because an amendment is a few years away, and everything I'm hearing about reference points, it's a lot closer than a few years away. So they're, you know, maybe they shouldn't be an or and should be an and, but I'm not sure when the right time to talk about that. Is that now or is that tomorrow? How does that go?
I think the board can give us direction on whether or not the board wants to continue the development of a Chesapeake Bay reference point, or if they want an updated stock assessment. So the board can give that direction tomorrow. And then in terms of the management response to the findings of whichever one of those things that we do, that can be done through an addendum. So that would be immediately after we had the report from the technical committee. And I also failed to say that we would also update all the data needs for these actions.
Thank you.
Bill Adler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 9, I just like a clarification on continue to task 1.4.3. Continue to focus board attention on developing clear problem statements prior to initiate is there a problem with what we already do, or what do you mean by developing clear? Is there something else that needs to be done on that?
I think we want to just keep going in the direction that we're going, and so that we have a clear statement of the problem as we go through addendum and amendment processes, so that the public understands why we are considering action.
Okay, I mean, are we not doing that now? Or
I think we are doing that now, and that's why it says to continue to focus your attention on those clear statement of the problem, so to keep doing what we are doing.
Any other questions for Tony? Seeing none, I have just one comment that I don't want anything added to the task, but under weakfish, I've had some discussions with some of my southern colleagues, and I think when the stock assessment is done, anything we can do to try to look at this north and south of Hatteras issue that appears to be occurring, might give us some good insight into what's going on with that population. There clearly seems to be a big difference between south of Hatteras and north of Hatteras in terms of weak fish abundance. So I'd like for the technical committee to take that into consideration when they're reviewing all the different indices and the data. Without objection. Great, thank you. So Pat, you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goal 2 covers the fisheries research, surveys, and stock assessment modeling activities of the Commission. In 2015, we will initiate a spot benchmark assessment. We will also complete assessments for American lobster, weakfish, scup, red drum, and bluefish, as well as an operational assessment for sea herring and the peer reviews of those assessments. Under 2.110, the Management and Science Committee will develop a commission policy regarding risk and uncertainty and provide that to the policy board for consideration. The Commission has increasingly become engaged with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, including recently participating in proposal reviews for both their fisheries innovation and river herring initiatives, so we will continue to do that in 2015. Under the NEMAP program, there's been a big change in that the Commission is receiving a grant from NOAA starting in 2015, essentially to administer the funding for the Mid-Atlantic Nearshore Trawl Survey. NEMAP will also conduct a couple of technical workshops regarding catch processing and trawl technology with the point of comparing methods and developing consistency among all state NEMAP, CMAP, and federal surveys, trawl surveys. And NEMAP will also continue to seek opportunities and resources to help supplement the horseshoe crab data collection for the Delaware Bay population. Moving on to CMAP, it's time for the CMAP program to develop their next 5-year plan. We will work on that next year for the 2016 to 2020 time period. Under fish tagging activities and programs, we will develop a long-term strategy for collecting striped bass tagging data, including funding, administration, and at-sea support. So that refers both to the cooperative tagging crews and the hook and line sampling. Under fish aging activities, we will are proposing 2 workshops for 2015. The first focusing on developing consistent methods for aging menhaden, and the second to conduct an annual aging quality control workshop among the different state and university aging labs. And finally, collaborate with the Gulf States Commission on developing an aging manual so that for the species that occur on both coasts, we're using, again, consistent aging methods. Under socioeconomic, fisheries socioeconomic activities, and that committee, we will dig into developing a socioeconomic analysis for menhaden next year. Under fish passage, a couple of new activities regarding implementation of a fish passage prioritization protocol that the committee has recently developed, as well as developing guidance for state staff on the FERC relicensing process and how to engage at the state level there. And finally, under the multi-species and ecosystem-based management arena, the Ecological Reference Points Working Group will develop and present options for board consideration on ecosystem-based reference points that account for predation. So those are the highlights and new items for 2015. Happy to take any questions.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on stock assessment things, do we have anywhere the cancer crab issue? Because when we came up to public hearing, a lot of people said, well, how can you do anything if you haven't got some stock assessment? Do we have any plans to maybe try to put something together on a stock assessment for cancer crab?
Bill, when we first initiated the FMP, we said that we would craft a FMP and then follow up with an assessment. So we have not put it on the assessment schedule since we haven't approved an FMP yet. But that was what the board had discussed, is the order that it would go in.
Okay, so it would happen after the FNP?
Correct.
I'd also add that, at least my understanding from the group that's been working on the cancer crabs to date, that there is some concern that they don't have a whole lot of information to go on to do a stock assessment, giving sort of the mixed identification in the data as well as the overall coverage of the data. So that's something that we'd have to ask our technical committee to dig into.
Dave Board?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Bill's point, as I think everybody knows, there's been an SK solicitation and in consultation with Mass Marine Fisheries Atlantic Offshore, and the division are going to sponsor a proposal to look at sexual maturity, which would, if it got funded, it would get at a lot of the uncertainty that the commission is trying to deal with. Thank you.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Pat. And on task 2.2.8, develop long-term strategy for collecting striped bass tagging data. What's that about a little bit more? What are the needs? What are the gaps in information? What do you foresee as that really encompassing?
At a minimum, it will pertain to looking at the cooperative winter tagging cruise, which we've done, of course, for a number of years, as well as the more recent hook and line sampling and tagging in the winter. So comparisons of those methods to see if the hook and line is working. But as we've talked about in the context of the striped bass assessment, maybe moving towards a different framework, I think it's also open for discussion, most likely at the striped bass technical committee, on the data needs and any additional monitoring or changes in state monitoring that would support more of a spatial model to support spatial management.
Anything else for Pat? Seeing nothing, we'll go back to Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goal 3 is our law enforcement goal. It's to promote compliance with fishery management plans and to ensure sustainable use of Atlantic coast fisheries. Most of the tasks under here are the similar tasks from last year, and we'll continue on with our law enforcement program to provide feedback to the management boards on new plans and current plans and how well we're doing. The one new task that we do have is to assist the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council in identifying strategies to address violations and illegal harvest involved in the research set-aside program, as the Mid-Atlantic Council does an overview of that program throughout the course of this year. Any questions on law enforcement?
Bill?
I'm sorry, page 17, just a question. On task 3.3.4, what is the Conservation Law Enforcement Chiefs Association? What is it?
Both of those groups, the Conservation Law Enforcement Chiefs and the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Law Enforcement Committee, are kind of what they sound like, organizations of law enforcement leadership, and they get together to collectively discuss enforcement issues up and down the coast and really throughout the nation. So it's just, we're going to monitor their activities and see if there's anything that spills over to our law enforcement committee that may be worth communicating back and forth on.
And in addition, Bill, there are members of our law enforcement committee who serve on those committees, so the overlap is easy to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goal 4 is our habitat goal. It's to protect and enhance fish habitat and ecosystem health through the partnership and education. So under task 4.11, it's we will be finalizing the cyanid habitat source document, working closely with the technical committees and other species experts and staff to do so. We will be developing the next installment of the habitat management series, which is climate change impacts on fish habitats for the policy board review and acceptance, as well as identify an additional topic for the next series. We also support the completion of the ACFIP science and data projects. We'll be acquiring and analyzing fish population, habitat, and human impacts data. We'll complete the winter flounder GIS habitat assessment and initiate a river herring habitat assessment. And we'll make all these results available to the different partners of ACFIP for the strategic coastal habitat conservation. And I did forget to mention that all of the ACFIP support falls under this goal 4. Any questions that we will continue to do?
Questions on habitat? Seeing none, we'll move on to stakeholder and public support. I'm assuming Tina will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll see the majority of tasks are continuing from last year, with a couple of additions. Task 519, we will start posting via YouTube and on our website presentations on benchmark stock assessments and repackage what is being presented to the board for greater stakeholder participation and involvement in that process. We'll also be developing a guide to basically fisheries management agencies and entities along the Atlantic coast to better differentiate our different authorities and responsibilities. And that is for the new task for Goal 5. Thank you.
Questions for Tina? If not, thank you, Tina. Bob?
Thank you, Lewis. Goal 6 is our congressional outreach and legislative initiatives. Most of this goal is ongoing activities. As Lewis said, you can't rest on your laurels because Congress changes and the staff changes, so we'll keep working with those offices and improving our relationships there. There is one task that is in bold, and that's to work with the other fisheries commissions around the country, primarily Gulf and Pacific, to speak collectively on behalf of the coastal states around the country. It's been a very effective way of meeting with congressional offices and NOAA leadership, and we're going to continue to do that. And within this is also, as the state directors know, the San Diego meeting that occurred at the beginning of September, where I think was a productive meeting, and NOAA Fisheries agreed to allow us to coordinate with them and provide state perspectives on budget priorities for their budget cycle. And we're actually having the first meeting with the NOAA Leadership Council. The 3 commissions will be meeting with them next Wednesday afternoon. So I think that's progress. We have never been able to meet with that group as a collective whole, the NOAA leadership. So getting time in front of those folks is important. So we're going to continue to do that, and we'll keep working in the state priorities any chance we get into the federal budgeting process, either on Capitol Hill or through the NOAA leadership. So that's Goal 6, Lewis. Any questions?
Dennis?
Not a question, but a comment. Sunday night, we met with folks from the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation and National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucus, and through that, we've made arrangements for DEEC to get in touch with their coordinator in the Washington area, where they have over 200 congressmen and 50 senators in their arena, so maybe they can provide some help working on Magnuson, Stevens, and other things. So there may be some mutual benefit there for you.
All right, I think Laura's going to take us home.
I sure will. First, before I go into the new tasks that are in Goal 7, I wanted to note that we have paid off the entire floating portion of the loan, and all we owe is less than $1 million, and that will be paid off in 6 years, and we will own our office space outright. So that's the first bit of good news. I will quickly go through the few new tasks that are in Goal 7. One of them's in 7.1, which is providing administrative support to the MRIP Dockside Service, APAIS, including human resources and meetings management, grant and financial monitoring and office space. Second one is providing administrative support to the NIMS at Sea Observer program. In 7.2, we're working on developing a link between the Commission's contact database and website to provide up-to-date committee lists. ACCSP is doing the majority of the work on that. We're going to continue to live stream Commission meetings and seek improvements to the process, although it's gone really well so far. 7.4, we're going to be revising 14 Knowledge into Change, which is a publication that we distributed in 25 years ago at our, almost 25 years ago at our 50th annual meeting. So we'll be updating that and revising that for distribution at the Commission's 75th annual meeting, which is in 2016. And then 7.5.3 is ensuring the annual submission of the financial disclosure and conflict of interest forms by the LGA commissioners and their proxies. Are there any questions?
Dennis?
I do have a question. Laura, could you just refresh myself and the other folks, how many years has it been that you've been in the new office?
We just had our 4th year.
4th year, and in that time, how much have we paid down? If I remember, the price was around $4 million, was it?
Yeah.
And we're down to $1 million now, so we paid $750,000.
Yep.
Richie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's probably premature, but soon, in the next few years, probably need to start planning how, where the available money will be going that won't be going to the payments. That would, sounds like a substantial amount that could be going to stock assessments or
Right now, our mortgage, yeah, we're paying $18,000 a month right now, so, and that's it. That's our mortgage now.
Right, so in 6
Absolutely,
years,
yep.
in 6 years, that's just a lot of money.
Which I just want to point out that we were, 4 years ago, before we moved, we were paying $34,000 a month for rent, and that was going to increase with the new lease. So.
It's crazy money. Golly, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a little incongruous, I think, because it might have related better to Tina's portion, but I just want to note that I was struck by the fact that the draft addendum for striped bass wasn't readily available on the website, and unless I missed it, before the meeting announcement came out, I couldn't get to the addendum in an easy way, and it may have been just me, but it just struck me that when we have a pending action as big as that, but frankly it would pertain to any major action pending, it seems to me that it should be readily accessible to the public on the website. And we can have a sidebar chat after this because maybe I missed it, but I just couldn't find it, and I'm wondering if we might want to do a better job making those pending actions readily available to the public through the website. So it's just a comment, and again, I don't want to take up time now unless Tina has a response. Thank you.
Generally, the pending actions are placed in a number of places under public input on the front page of the website. I remove them once the public comment period is over to avoid confusion, to present the fact that folks may think that we're still accepting public comment on it, and it was included in the board materials for that. But staff can talk about a better way of doing that to make sure that folks don't need to search for it.
Thank you, and that does answer the question. I think that's what happened, is after the public comment period ended, it disappeared. Of course, there was no lack of continuing public interest in the issue, so I just think we might want to try to find a happy medium there. Thank you.
Mitch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that I want to compliment the staff and the commission for live streaming meetings. I'm getting feedback from a lot of folks that they're actually going to the web and participating in or listening in on our meetings. So whoever's doing all the good work to make that happen should know that it's not for nothing, that it really is reaching people. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
I guess you're tracking the numbers of people that come on, and can we get a report on one day of how many people are listening in on the sessions?
Do again? Get it. He was asking if we could get number of the people that are actually listening in to the live streaming. And Tina says we can. Anything else for any of the staff on the 2015 action plan? If not, I would accept a motion to accept. Motion by David Borden to accept the 2015 action plan, second by Mitch Feigenbaum. Any discussion on the motion? Oh, Joe's not here, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay. Oh, there he is over there. Well, you weren't over. Wait a minute. Okay. Sorry. I do have a different perspective up here. So I'll wait till he gets up. So move to accept the 2015 action plan. Motion by Dave Borden, second by Mitch Feigenbaum. Is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the motion carries. Well done. Back to you, Bob.
Want me to go 14? The other item that was on the agenda was the 2014 action plan progress update, which is essentially briefing the commissioners on where we stand with relation to this year's action plan. There are a number of things that were delayed for various reasons. I can quickly go through those. There was a requirement for an addendum for lobster conservation management areas 4, 5, and 6, and that was worked on at this morning's lobster board meeting and achieving that 10% reduction goal. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. That's to right-size the fishery to the availability of the resource, and that hasn't been done, but the board asked the LSMTs to work on it at the August meeting. The lobster assessment was delayed due to data issues, and that'll be finalized in early 15. Bluefish assessment was pushed back due to different priorities within the SARC schedule, and that'll be in 2015 as well. The SCUP assessment was changed from a benchmark assessment to what's called a rumble strip, which is just a abbreviated update of the stock assessment. The sturgeon assessment was delayed due to the complexity of that assessment, and that's going to be finished in 2017 rather than 2015. Risk and uncertainty, as Pat mentioned, those are being tackled in this year's action plan. The committee was focused on climate change issues and the impacts on fisheries distribution. The intermediate and advanced stock assessment training workshops. All of our assessment folks are cranking out assessments full-time, basically, so we didn't have time to do the training workshops this year, and they are in the action plan for next year. East Coast Aquarium and Fisheries Science 101. These are two outreach projects that we didn't get to just due to lack of time. They have been rolled over into the action plan for this year. The annual meeting of the Atlantic Coast Fisheries Communication Group, which is sort of the outreach coordinators for all the fishery agencies up and down the coast. That meeting wasn't held, but Tina participated with a number of those folks in the South Atlantic Council Communication project on science and graphics. There was a task to work with the executive committee to determine the appropriate way to orient new commissioners. We didn't do that. I think we still need to do that. New commissioners get a variety of communications from us and a lot of materials, but it's probably worthwhile to sit down with new commissioners, spend some time with them, have them understand or help them understand what each of the different departments do and how the process works. So we're gonna come up with a plan to do that. It's tricky. We don't want to use too much of our the volunteer time from our new commissioners, but I think it's probably worthwhile to spend some time with new commissioners so they can get up to speed a little bit more quickly, because there's a lot of history and a lot of baggage with some of the things that we do. And also working with the Commission's attorney on Freedom of Information Act requests. We're not a federal agency, so FOIA doesn't directly apply to us, but we've been very open with providing any information that anyone asks for at the Commission, unless it involves confidential data. So if anyone has asked for communications or letters or background on any issue at the Commission, we're more than happy to provide it. The only thing we can't violate is the confidentiality laws on data. And so those are the things that weren't done. There's a list of things that were done above and beyond the beyond the action plans. Things pop up during the year, and we contributed to a number of other science projects and new display that you may have seen out in the hallway, and a number of other things that we've done to streamline our database issues and developing procedures within the Office for Finance and Administration. So that's a quick summary of where we stand relative to the things we intended to do this year. Happy to answer any questions if you guys are concerned about delays or anything else.
Adam?
Would there be an opportunity for the stock assessment training and the fisheries science training to work with MREP and the Gulf of Maine Research Institute now that they're working with the Mid-Atlantic Council here in the Mid-Atlantic region?
Is that in order to provide training at the MREP sessions, or are you looking for something different?
Well, I think that when they conduct their training sessions throughout the year, or potentially the opportunity for them to have more and send commissioners, as opposed to, I see with the item for intermediate and advanced stock assessment training, assessment scientists working full-time on stock assessments. I think we want them working full-time on those assessments, but through the MREP program, it would raise the question of, do we need the stock assessment scientists do we have to pull them away if there's already a training mechanism in place to get the same information?
Well, this training, Adam, was actually for state assessment biologists to meet with our staff and get trained on new assessment methodology. So it's pulling along all the state biologists and some federal biologists and teaching them new assessment techniques. The training here wasn't designed for commissioners. It was more for biologists at the state level to provide them intermediate and advanced assessment training.
Okay, yeah, and again, 2.5.1 said conduct training workshop for commissioners, so that's what I would think the opportunity would be there for. Something to look at moving forward if that is the intent for more commissioners, if that interest level is there, I think that might be a place to take advantage of it.
Any other comments on the update, 2014 update? If not, we will move into other business. Emerson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you know, the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council suspended the research set-aside program, the Mid-Atlantic Research Set-Aside Program, for at least a year in order to address concerns that the council members and council staff raised relative to that program. That was just recently done by the council. That effectively took a little bit more than $1 million a year in funding available for fisheries research, most of it being done cooperatively with the fishing industry. It's a significant amount of money that's been taken off of the table for fisheries research to help answer a lot of the questions that come up in our discussions about managing the various species that we manage. That money isn't going to be replaced by some other entity. That program is funded through 3% of the overall quota for several different species. Summer flounder, scup, sea bass, bluefish, longfin squid, mackerel, butterfish, and probably something else that I've forgotten to list. So anyhow, that comes out of the quota that this commission approves every year. And I think it's to the interest of the commission to weigh in on the research set-aside program and perhaps help the council develop some new procedures and protocols to help get the RSA program back on track so that we can utilize that $1 million a year in funding. And when you're ready, Mr. Chairman, I've got a motion I'd like to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Emerson on his, Dave?
Excuse me, not a question, but I'd like to just go on the record as totally supporting what he's suggesting. Everyone in the room basically has to commit annually to placing a tax on your constituents in order to support this. And if that's the case, I think that it's an appropriate question and proposal for the commission to advance, that we should have some say in how that program gets structured, and not only that, what priorities get formulated through it and which projects get formulated. I guess my feeling is we have to take on more of a prominent role than we have in the past. Thank you.
Tom?
The last couple of years, I had basically voted against the RSAs mainly because it was used for NEMAP, and this is the first year it would not have been used for NEMAP, and we could actually done some research. But I always had some concerns that a lot of this money was being raised from sale of RSAs on black sea bass, summer flounder, because they're the most, where they get the most bang for the dollar and the biggest part of the quota, and you have very little in comparison to that money was being spent on those two species, and a lot of it was being redirected to other places. We first got into this program was the idea of industry funding research in the fisheries they were basically taking the quota out of, and we had gotten away from that. And so I agree with Dave and I agree with Emerson that if we're going to get involved in this again, we need to make sure that where the money is being spent, it should be on the fisheries where the money's coming from or where the quota is coming from. Because we're taxing, and that 3% quota can mean a lot of days fishing in the recreational community, and it also means a lot more money in the commercial communities, and it's not just we should do this now. I think in the beginning we were not against having to be taxed like that, but we wanted to make sure it was going in the right place, and that's what we need to ensure, and we need to be a bigger part of it.
Well, let's hear your motion, Emerson, and we can have further discussion.
Okay, it's a draft, and we can modify it if need be. I'd like to move that the commission request that the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council put together a special committee to address concerns over the RSA program. For that committee to be comprised of members of both the commission and the council. And further, that this committee and the council and the commission work in a speedy manner to reinstate the RSA program as soon as possible.
Can you provide that to staff so they can get it up on the board?
Yeah, if they can read it.
Dave, while we're getting that up on the board?
Yeah, if you can get a second, probably is appropriate, and then I'll comment.
Okay. Well,
in the interest of time, we were talking about it anyway, so we put it up. I need my memory refreshed. Every August, we meet jointly with the Mid-Atlantic Council for Fluke's Cup and sea bass. We don't vote jointly on everything, but I thought we did. The Fluke's Cup Sea Bass Board voted on RSA, so the commission does have a voice. I believe that's right, and Bob seems to be nodding.
Yeah, the commission has voted jointly with the Mid-Atlantic Council on research set aside, and mostly, our plan does not have RSA included in the commission's FMP, but the board did vote on on the research set-aside levels so that we ended up with consistent quotas with the Mid-Atlantic Council. So if the Mid-Atlantic set aside 3% and we did not, and the board did not mirror that activity, then we'd have the quota is 3% higher than the Mid, and all the problems that occur when we have different quotas. So that's really the Commission's involvement has been making sure that the quotas stay identical and we don't end up with problems there. But you're right, it has been a joint motion by the board and the council in the past.
Okay, so Louis, I would say we're already fully engaged, at least for those 3 species, and we don't have really much of anything to do with mackerel and squid. So I'm not sure this is necessary. We already have what's being asked for. And then if I could get a reminder, I think it took us a few years to get to zeroing out RSA because of concerns for NEMAP going unfunded if that money were not available, and now NOAA has picked up the cost of that. Do you have a ballpark on what NEMAP cost and so what NOAA is picking up, just a ballpark?
It's about $1 million, a little over that, 1.1. So it's a big chunk of change.
So the federal government has really stepped up and virtually fully replaced the money that was lost from fluke scup and sea bass and RSA. So that's a big plus for us. An important surveys on a solid funding basis now.
All right, I've got a motion. Is there a second to the motion? Second from Dave Borden. Dave?
I'd just suggest to Emerson, I think it'd be clearer if you, in that second line, we got special, change that to joint, a joint committee. In other words, that's what the intent is, to have both organizations contribute members to it. And then to follow up on Bob Beal's comment about the NEMAP project, I think it's important for everybody to just kind of reflect on it. During the last couple of years, there were only 2 projects that got funded with RSA funding. The URI Black Sea Bass Study and the NEMAP project, and they used up the full allocations that were available. And so by having National Marine Fisheries Service now fund NEMAP, it really frees up the opportunity for the Commission and the Mid-Atlantic Council to do about 5 $200,000 projects, which would be a significant addition. If you think of, as we're going through priority setting and action plan discussions, you think about all the things that we need to tune up, fine tune, get a little bit better scientific information. This is a real opportunity to advance our understanding on some of these problems that have kind of dogged us for a number of years. So I think this is a real opportunity for the Commission to take a step forward. Thank you.
A couple quick comments, not in favor or in opposition to the motion. But the Mid-Atlantic Council already has a research set-aside committee that's going to, dig into this. So, the way the motion is worded now is that, request the Mid-Atlantic Council put together a joint committee. So the way it's worded now, I read it as the Mid decides individually who's on this committee. I think you guys may want more say in the joint membership of that committee rather than having the Mid completely form it. But, there are a number of state representatives on the RSA committee already at the Mid-Atlantic Council. It doesn't include the Southern New England states that participated quite a bit in the research set-aside program. So it may, some of those things, we may want to tweak the wording there a little bit.
Paul?
I just have a question for clarification. I guess I'm not sure, other than the program is, at least for the time being, disbanded, what is the intent moving forward, regardless of this? What is the current intent of the Mid regarding the RSA program?
Yeah, when they zeroed out the RSA last year, there was a lot of discussion on what it means to move forward. And it appears, or my recollection is that they want to move forward with looking at all the details of the RSA program that led to, frankly, a lot of poaching, a lot of illegal activity. So they want to look at that and try to determine if there's ways to minimize that opportunity. And they also, a number of folks that brought up issues such as the auction and should that continue. And so they wanted really to open up the whole program and look at it. And the law enforcement folks needed to be, intimately involved with that as it moving forward. But the poaching issues were one of the significant concerns that led them to zero out the program this year.
Yeah, I understand that part, but so they're currently in a review process. They're taking a little hiatus and they're going to review. I think one of the concerns that we've expressed, at least from Massachusetts, is all of that, what you just said. Plus, there was never any recognition how the RSA set aside would be intertwined with state fisheries management programs and the administration of those fisheries, particularly by states that had nothing to do with the RSA, but were expected to incorporate a new type of activity within their states. And so that was problematic. So, moving forward, I think this commission certainly needs to have an active role. I'm not sure if this motion is what gets us there, but I wouldn't be comfortable for that program to come back online without a very active role by this commission. So,
Doug?
Just a suggestion on the rewarding that Bob was mentioning, that instead of the commission requesting, the commission work together with the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Management Council to put, does that work for you, Emerson?
Yes, it does.
Emerson and David are good with those changes? Okay. I've got Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and I'm open to other suggestions as well to tweak this motion. But my intent here is to have the commission actively involved in restructuring the RSA program. Yes, we do vote during the specifications to allocate that 3%, but right now this whole process is with the Mid-Atlantic Council. And yes, there is an RSA committee within the council, and yes, there are some state representatives on that committee, but I would like to formalize the process more so that the commission has a formal role to play in the reformatting and revitalization of the RSA program. Thank you.
Jim Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And some of you are probably aware of this, but the main reason it was the hiatus on the RSA program was because of the illegal activity going on. The Department of Justice has been aggressively pursuing that, and they had several cases, and last week there was a sentencing of one of the dealers, and he is going to spend 4 months in prison and pay in excess of $500,000 in penalties. So the deterrent factor in terms of what was going on with this program, I think, is being well handled by that. So my concerns are a little bit, I was on the side of should we consider doing this, but I think from the fishermen cheating in the future, they're going to take a second thought about doing that. Thank you.
I would. Tom Bodie?
Yeah, I also think there was a lot of expense by the states to basically monitor these programs, and that was never addressed in the RSA program. And that's one of the reasons Jersey always had a difficult time with this, because we didn't have enough funds to do what we're doing to basically then start enforcing there, and they were demanding it because the way the program started moving in a different direction than it originally started. And unless those are really addressed, I don't know if I can support going back to the system. I mean, the way originally it was put forward, it was, the fish was sold, the money went for research, that was it. But when we started basically saying how auctions and quotas, and that you could do this with the recreational sector, and you could do this with the commercial sector, then it got more complicated to enforce. So what I would like to see is when the Mid-Atlantic Council gets finished with their review process, and we're part of that, and then it brings back to us, and we have to have a joint, before the commission signs away 3% of a quota, it shouldn't be an automatic yes, because we have to do this, because the quotas be different, is that we should be a real partner in how it's done, and the states should be all in agreement on how it's done, at least by a vote, a majority of the states. So I think it's a little more process I'm looking for than is in this motion, because I realize we are giving away 3% of the quota on a lot of species, and yet we have very little to do with it at the commission. And we shouldn't just be rubber stamping with the Mid-Atlantic, because that's gotten us in a lot of trouble over the years, and I'm accepting quotas that I don't think are right just because one of the bodies over there does things differently than our monitoring committee used to do. So I have more concerns than I had when I originally started this discussion.
Dave Borden, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'll just make this really quick, Mr. Chairman. To Paul's point, I think that's exactly, his point's a good point, and I think that's exactly the reason the commission needs to be involved in the discussion.
Bob Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to suggest a perfection to the motion to add to improve and reinstate the RSA program. I think that speaks to the spirit of what we're looking to do here. Thank you.
Without objection from Emerson or Dave?
That's fine with me.
Okay. Paul?
Well, Bob Ballou may have just addressed my concern. I was concerned with the last part of the motion, given that we're looking at convictions that have resulted in significant jail time, very substantial fines, a burden on states to participate and monitor this program. And so I wasn't comfortable saying that the commission wanted to work in a speedy manner to reinstate the program that caused all that. So I wanted to either eliminate that last fragment of the motion, or perhaps this helps. But I wasn't comfortable voting for it the way it was. I'd prefer that last part of it be eliminated and just say that this commission recommends working with the MID in reviewing the RSA, and if the findings of that review warrant reinstating it, then that's what will happen. But it may be that review finds that the program is not doable for a number of reasons. It's very difficult to manage.
I see exactly what you're saying there. All right, Rob, can you fix it?
No. No, I was going to say the intent I support, but it's turned into sort of an awkward motion as far as I can see. I can't see the council starting up a joint committee. They already have an RSA committee, as Bob mentioned. I'm on that committee. There may be some others who are as well. I think the idea is just to have the commission on that RSA committee, and then what Paul has just indicated really should be the charge to work to improve it. And when it gets reinstated, that's subject to a lot of the comments around the board. But mainly to make sure the commission has some investment in that committee that already exists.
Emerson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to the discussion, my intent here for having the word speedy in there was to keep the process from languishing. I didn't want it to just be put on the back burner with the council saying they didn't have the time to get to it, and we go through another couple of years before anything happens with the RSA program. So I'd be willing to take out speedy, maybe put in expeditious manner to improve and reinstate the RFA program if possible. I don't know if that helps to address some of the concerns we're hearing. Although the council did suspend the program, they didn't do away with it, and their intent was to bring it back. Again, I just don't want them to bring it back 10 years from now, perhaps, you know, when it's sitting on the back burner. So anyhow, I don't know if that change works. I don't know if Dave is here, if he'd accept those in a second.
Richie? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once this committee completed its work, what is the approval process that would take place for it to be reinstated? Does the Mid-Atlantic have the authority just to do it, or does it have to be approved by the Mid-Atlantic and the Commission? I mean, how does that? What's the next step?
As I mentioned earlier, Richie, the ASMFC does not have research set aside in any of its FMPs. So, you know, if the commission wanted to memorialize that, it would have to be done through maybe even an amendment process if it's not part of our adaptive management. The Mid-Atlantic Council does have provisions for research set aside in their FMP, but it would probably take, at a minimum, a framework to capture some of the changes, and it may require even an amendment to their FMP to capture the changes for the administration of the research set aside. So, you know, depending on the magnitude of the changes, you know, probably would determine what course of action needs to be taken to sort of memorialize those changes and have them in you know, control the way the program's administered in the future.
So basically, we would be in advisory capacity.
Well, I think a number of people around the table would like to have the commission much more involved and not just be advisors to the RSA, have sort of equal footing in the research set aside program with the Mid-Atlantic Council. So that would take a modification to our FMP at a minimum.
But even if we were members of the RSA committee, it would still be up to full council to make the final charge. I guess the concern that I have is that the first part of the motion I don't believe is practicable. I think what we really want is a number of people to be given seats on the RSA committee. I don't think we want to form a separate committee. They've got a committee. So I'm wondering I'm trying to think as the council chairman gets the letter that we would like for them to form a new committee, a joint committee, as opposed to they might view a request from us to have, say, 4 members from the ASMFC be placed on their RSA committee to help to work together to improve the RSA program and reinstate if appropriate. I think that addresses at least some of the concerns that I've heard around the table in terms of what we could actually accomplish, which I know that's what you're trying to do, is accomplish this. But there's 2 different approaches: either request seats on their existing RSA committee or the motion as read. It's up to y'all. Paul?
I agree with you, Louis. I think, because Rob, I think you said that you're on the current committee and you're a member of both the council and the commission. I guess the problem is where there are members of this group that are not, such as myself, that are not members of the MID, and have a strong interest in not only the development of an RSA program, but how it affects us in terms of these intersecting fisheries and how we manage them. So I think if you can remodel this a little bit so that you're not creating a new commission, you're really just seeking membership for non-council members that are members of this commission to join it. I think that would certainly satisfy me. So that would be helpful.
I mean, I'm perfectly happy to try to wordsmith the current motion if it's all right with Emerson and Dave, or we can vote this up or down and move, and if it gets voted down, we can try again, but I don't think it's going to pass with the way it's written right now. I may be wrong. Emerson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said earlier, I'm open to wordsmithing this to make it work. And my intent here, by saying a joint committee, was to be either a new committee or just an expanded RSA committee. And I would be happy to let the executive director of both of these institutions, the commission and the council, work out the details of how that has to get done. That's fine with me.
If everybody agrees with that concept, I think it might get us along a little faster. Tina passed a note to ensure adequate ASMFC state representation on the RSA committee. I think that's sort of the lead-in statement. And then we would request membership, and if we can allow Bob to work with Rick or Chris Moore to get a sense of how best to do it, then I think we might move a little quicker if everybody's in agreement to handling it that way. Is there any objection to handling it that way? Is that Brandon or Tom? I can't tell. Okay, Brandon?
We don't look alike.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, there is a standing RSA committee on the council. Was a new committee formed to evaluate the RSA program, or was the entire RSA committee charged at looking at that? I think that might help. If it's to try to get seats on a standing RSA committee within the council versus a committee that was charged to evaluate the program, I don't know if there is a difference or not, but might help.
Rob?
My understanding is it's the same committee. Rich Seagraves is the staff person for that committee, and the idea when there was a suspension, it wasn't a unanimous situation. I would say probably 40% were in the minority to keep the RSA going, because there are projects that are held to be pretty important. So you have to keep that in mind. I don't think there's any intent by the Mid-Atlantic Council to delay. I think what they will probably do, and this is just my estimate, there would probably be at least 2 RSA committees that would be held within the next 11 months period, and then there would eventually be, that information would be provided to the full council. So it seems really important to me that this link be made between the ASMFC and the council through Chris Moore and Rick Robbins, perhaps, to get started on the existing RSA committee, because that's the one that will review this situation. And I think they would welcome having some members who had different perspectives who weren't within that Mid-Atlantic region. That would be really important. And also those members who might have species of interest, which typically do not get the RSA allocations.
So, Adam.
it seems that our goal is simply to request that the council work jointly with the commission in the review and evaluation of the RSE program to reinstate it in 2016. And if that's our goal, maybe we should just say it that simply, that we're requesting that they work jointly with us. And in 15 words, I think we can get our point across. And if that is what we're getting towards, something that simple, I can repeat that a lot more slowly.
Rob. Oh, Rob's got his mic on?
Richie? I'm still getting my arms around this process. So our expectation is that this committee will have a recommendation of how this program will go forward, and the commission will have votes on that committee, a Mid-Atlantic committee. And if there's disagreements in there, they'll have to take a vote. So commissioners will have a vote in the Mid-Atlantic committee, I guess. I don't quite see how that works. I'm thinking if that went the other way, I'm not sure we'd be as open to that, but it's...
I mean, we've added seats for the Mid and the New England Council on South Atlantic plans and done those kinds of things amongst councils. But, I mean, I understand the need to have this. We do have good ASMFC representation on the RSA set-aside committee. The big gap is in the New England area, as Paul indicated. I mean, so we've got Steve Hines from New York, Bob Beal, our guy, Rob O'Reilly, Leroy, and Chris Batsavage from North Carolina, and Stu Mickles from Delaware. So you've got pretty good representation already on that committee. I think where the issue might, it might be nice to have somebody from New England, and maybe one of the commissioners who's on the New England Council might ask to be involved in that committee, which might be a little cleaner than it being a commission council marriage. It could be a New England council. I'm sure the state directors up in New England might be interested in doing that, or one of the appointed members. So I really don't know what you want to do. I mean, there's multiple options on how to skin this cat. Yes, sir. Craig.
Well, it sounds like there are a number of very good reasons as to why we should try and resolve this. The question is, can you do it with this motion? I don't think you can. I like going back to the idea of having the executive director and perhaps you, as the leader of this organization, maybe entering into a discussion so there's no misunderstanding about what we're trying to do, and making it very clear that some of the concerns that I've heard around the table here today probably aren't going to go away unless they get them resolved. Unless we get them resolved in terms of reinstatement. So I don't know how we do that. I don't know if that takes a motion, which would then provide, I think, the standing you would need to enter into that kind of a conversation. I think the goal's pretty clear, but then we wouldn't be into trying to overtake a committee that isn't probably going to be looking to be overtaken. Maybe there is a way that you can jointly figure it out.
Yeah, I would much prefer that we be given that. That would be certainly the direction I would prefer us go in, to give Bob and me the opportunity to talk to Rick and Chris and explain these things and try to figure it out. But if that's agreeable to everyone, we can either amend this motion or withdraw this motion, and I don't know that we need a motion to direct us to do that. So as long as it's by consensus. So does anyone object to that approach? Emerson, are you comfortable withdrawing your motion with the understanding that Bob and I will take your issue to the council?
Well, I'm somewhat comfortable with that, no offense. But I think I originally said that, move that the commission request, I forgot my exact words originally here, request that the council put together a joint committee. So that request would come from our chairperson and our executive director to the chairperson and the executive director of the council. So I could go back to changing this motion to say that we request that the commission, I'll just say the commission, or I could say that the commission's chair and executive director work with Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council to put together a joint committee to address these concerns.
Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do like to give you a hard time sometimes, but that motion doesn't belong to Mr. Hasbrook at this time. It belongs to the board, and I think we should probably either vote it up or down or table it for the time being.
That is true, Representative Abbott.
Former.
Nah. All right, then we have had much discussion on this, and I've already gone 15 minutes over time in my first meeting as the newly elected, re-elected chairman. So I would like to.
You don't have to worry about re-election.
Okay, who said that? You are the new chairman. Let's vote on this. Give you 10 seconds to caucus. All right, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. The motion is defeated. So, Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess maybe the one thing that might have been missing from my prior comments was kind of a date certain for you folks to report back, and I would hope that that could be by the February meeting, if not sooner. I don't know if that helps anybody that might be concerned that this would somehow fall off the tracks.
I would think we could do it well before February meeting. I mean, it's just a matter of Bob and I scheduling a conference call with Rick and Chris, right? So we could do that next week. Emerson?
Yeah, so based on the results of that vote, I'm going to trust that the two of you go forward with the consensus of the commission here. And time is of the essence somewhat. It's my understanding that the council is going to put together, or is going to have a RSA committee meeting at the December council meeting. So I would request that this discussion take place, to have something in place for that December council meeting. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Tom?
Yeah, since December council is a joint meeting with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and a lot of the states that are black sea bass, summer flounder, and scub are going to be there, maybe it'd be a good time to have the open discussion and a report on where we are with doing this at that meeting. And since I'm not going to be there, it'll be a good place to do it.
We hadn't figured that out yet. Okay. Anything else on this issue? So we will let y'all know the results of our discussion with the mid as soon as we have that discussion. So, all right. That was the longest other business issue I think I've ever had. So Terry's going to be really quick. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be quick. I've got a motion from the hearing section concerning a maintenance proposal that the coordinating council will be reviewing later this afternoon on portside catch sampling and comparative bycatch. And if I get a second for it, I'll provide the rationale.
It's on behalf of the committee, so you don't need a second.
Okay. We'll get up on the board.
While they're getting that up on the board, I have one other piece of other business that I'd like to jump in front of you real quick. And let you know that we will be, the meeting tomorrow, the striped bass meeting, there's some of us concerned about the meeting room being able to hold the crowds of people that we anticipate could come to that meeting. I don't think it's going to be Menhaden 2, but it could be pretty crowded. So we're going to have the live streamed computers in the other rooms so that overflow crowd can go in to those meetings and listen to the deliberations. So you bear with us tomorrow when we start to set up for that meeting, because we may have to move a few things around and try to adjust. So we'll need your help, and particularly for the folks on the back row, if you could make sure you take all of your stuff with you today when you go back to your rooms, because we may actually move those tables out of the way so we can get a few additional lines of chairs back there. Not that we don't love you, it's just that y'all aren't on that board, so we might need your space. So, any questions or concerns about that? We'll be working with the Connecticut delegation and others to make that happen. So, back to you, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This motion on behalf of the hearing section is in support of a maintenance program that the state of Maine has applied for 13 years. It supports the portside commercial catch sampling and bycatch monitoring for herring, mackerel, and Menhaden fisheries from Maine to New Jersey. Elimination, if this program is not funded, it will result in the elimination of our current age-structured model, the current ASMFC spawning closure management, eliminate our involvement in haddock and river herring bycatch and incidental catch monitoring. These are important keystone monitoring for the commission and two councils. The committee had a good debate about it. It was not a unanimous vote out of concern, not knowing what the other priorities of the coordinating council were. But it's something that's very important to those members of the hearing, most members of the hearing section.
Any questions for Terry? Is there any objection to the motion from the Atlantic hearing section? Seeing none, motion carries. Bob, you've got a couple of things?
Why don't you adjourn?
Okay. Any other business to come in front of the commission? Seeing none, we are adjourned, and Bob's got a couple of announcements.
Sure, two quick announcements. One is the next meeting in this room is the ACCSP Coordinating Council jointly meeting with the ISFMP Policy Board. So what that means is we're going to have a lot of people around the table. Please make some room for the folks that aren't at the table. The seats up front here, we can put a few folks. I know Tom Neese and some others are here that will need to move toward the table if they want to. So please try to accommodate the extra folks at the table. And the executive committee tomorrow morning is going to start out as a closed session. So from 8 to 8:30, that's going to be a closed meeting. And from about 8:30 to 9, once the doors open, the executive committee is going to tackle a number of agenda items on procedural issues for the commission. And then from 9 to 10, the executive committee will tackle the priority setting discussion with the regional leadership from the southeast and the northeast region of NOAA fisheries. And some of those folks are going to dial in. So we're going to need to start that discussion promptly at 9 o'clock. So just wanted folks to know that the first half hour of executive committee will be closed session to deal with my review, follow up to my review and some other things. So I just didn't want folks to show up expecting to come in the room and find a sign up on the door. I think it's in one of the rooms across the hall. So that's it. We'll get the ACCSP, ISFMP meeting going in about 5 to 10 minutes as soon as we can set up. 3:15. 3:15, Lewis says.